bobbing along on the bottom of the beautiful briny sea. Hey yes folks, I hope you enjoy listening to my dulcet tones, because today we may or may not have quite an answer on our hands. Today, for day 24, we shall be answering a question of technology. What is the tech level of your world? Does magic integrate into it? Technology is one of the thornier sides of fantasy literature and role-playing media in general. You see, there's a certain amount of expectation that swords and sorcery will not get in the way of having modern conveniences, for instance. Take the concept of bathing and general keeping yourself and your things clean. The feudal era was a smorgasbord for horrible parasites, lice, bad stuff happening to your teeth, your feet, all kinds of things. Generally speaking, it was not a particularly clean place to exist. Now, listening to fantasy worlds which have this ostensible idea of being generally kind of feudalistic or maybe even Middle Ages, they still have things like baths. They still have things like cleaning. One of the reasons why people didn't bathe that often is because of the difficulty of keeping it clean, keeping it from giving you an illness or any kind of other thing. Nowadays we use treated water that's been cleaned of any kinds of horrible shit that's actually existent. And in the case of, shall we say, apocalyptic events or anything like that, our main concern isn't going to be survival, it's going to be not dying of typhus. But at the same time as wanting to say that you want to be historically accurate in a world of magic, you also don't want to have to describe in epic detail how one of the worries that your party members are going to have to actually worry about is one day catching gangrene because they scraped their leg on a rock. It's a wish to really abstract out these nitty-gritty issues that arise from a world that is somehow simultaneously in our past, however, also with our sensibilities. We have the sensibility of keeping clean. We have the sensibilities of washing your hands before every meal. I mean, that's a habituative action. That's not something that really existed in feudal era. Now, as no doubt anybody who's really heard about these kind of discussions before, you're able to kind of abstract out. It's fantasy, use magic, blah, blah, blah. These kind of different things, they can all come around. But it's always good to recognize, even on the most basic level, that there are these conversations that have to be discussed in order for you to be informed enough to come up with your own descriptions and explanations of it. Now, for me, one of the themes of Talum, one of the major driving ideologies of the land, is the inconsistency of information and technology from place to place. The 5 free cities each have basically 5 different technological levels. They generally do come around to the mid to late Iron Age, but it still is the case that in Hull they would have more technological advancement in the basis of stonemasonry, because there happens to be stones to quarry. On the other hand, Sanguin, with its highly developed canal system and Veltland, has a very, very advanced concept of use of inland boats and canoes. Now, these homegrown technologies are very staunchly protected by their parent cities, and the sharing and trading of the different technologies would be either a great event or an actual act of war. And this isn't what we're talking about with like minor border disputes or fighting over single tracts of land. We're talking about people going out to find the inventor that somebody had kidnapped and either recapture them or kill them. And I mention inventor because that is actually where a lot of technology comes from. This isn't an idea of people gathering together, engineers and smart people all coming together and working together, a la the Manhattan Project, or really what we have as present-day doctorates. Generally speaking, it'll be some kind of grand artisan, a scholar of maybe some renown, maybe of some eccentricity, who has a patron who is able to fund whatever it is that they're trying to make. As a result, the loss of these scholars, the loss of these wise people, these magic users, would be a massive blow to the strategic and scholarly pursuits of that particular city. And having said magic user, it's actually a good time to particularly bring that up. Magic and technology are not considered to be in any way, shape or form distinct. Just as blacksmiths didn't have a full grasp of what they were doing when they were making any kind of folding techniques or alloying, magic users, while they have some kind of idea and possible theories of it, do not have a full grasp of what they are actually doing when a magic effect is occurring. Now, yet again, I want to reiterate that by no means am I actually saying that they're somehow idiot savants, people who have no way of understanding. It's just that the scope of how they are using the information that they have, as well as how they process it, is very different from how we do it in our modern day. Now consider Talum, which has a very, very small scholar pool. Generally speaking, you're working with 1 or 2 written works and possibly a master-apprentice type relationship, which would really be a great boost from any other situation, but also would be very stymieing in the form of you would only have these few ideas in which to base your own ideas from. There's also this kind of feudal concept of respecting your elders, respecting the people before, and also the utilitarian fact of it's working. Why are you questioning something that is working? Now, I'd love to go on and talk about what would be the reasoning for why you would include the idea of Warforged or Automata. You know, it's kind of an interbleed of sci-fi ideologies and themes into a fantasy setting. And I will probably do something about that kind of thing later. What I would actually like to talk about right now is more to do with Winter Night, which is the most technologically advanced of all of them, with possibly the exception of Mernal. Winter Night, as a result of its boom of trading deals with outside forces, has actually come into possession of the capacity and the production of firearms. These are very, very rudimentary, and they generally exist in much the same way as the Battle of Bosworth. This is kind of short-range cannons and guns that ostensibly had to be held and braced using a stick, because they would literally throw people around. I also like the idea of using them kind of as an unstable thing, because that was kind of how they were at the Battle of Bosworth. But really, this is more of a question for players. This is more of a question of what kind of idea would the player have. For instance, would the player want to play a gunslinger? If there are no guns, no, they can't. And I don't like the idea of squeezing the player in that much. As a result, this side of technology, and actually on the other side magic, is left more in my conversations with players and how they want to play certain things. Personally, I don't like the idea of having firearms in my world, but it's not like I'm gonna knock someone for asking. And that's my bit, and that's my way, and I thank you all for listening in. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I will speak to you guys tomorrow. Ciao!